Today we're going to learn a very simple but much more effective way to create luminosity masks in Photoshop and use that to bring the best out of your photos. And if you're wondering, what is luminosity mask? How to use it? Take a deep breath, my friend, because this is the video for you. Right from what is luminosity masks to why do you need it, to some advanced ways to use that to create beautiful images. We'll cover them also without any further ado. Let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop, and first of all, let us understand what are luminosity masks. So simple, let's break it down. Luminosity masks. What is luminosity? Well, luminosity in simple terms mean brightness, right? Very simple. Luminosity masks. Brightness mask. Now what is mask? Well, a mask determines where the layer, adjustment layer, effect or filter will be visible and in which areas it won't be visible. As simple as that. So luminosity masks are the masks based on luminosity. Make sense? No? Let me make it sense for you. So for example, what is a mask, right? So first of all, if you go ahead and create a new layer and you paint something with, say, okay, let's paint something with red, just sample stroke. A mask determines where this layer is going to be visible and where this is not going to be visible. So if I go ahead and create a mask, see, this is a mask. White are the areas which determines where it is visible, and black are the areas which determine where it is not visible. As you can see, it's completely white, so whole of the layer is visible. So I can take a brush, make sure the foreground color is black by pressing X to toggle between the foreground and the background. And if I paint here, see, this area goes black and this area goes hidden from here, right? If I want that back, I'll press X again to toggle between the foreground and the background and just paint it to get rid of that black there and get it back. Now this is a simple mask. What if you want to create a mask based on luminosity, based on brightness? So you are saying to Photoshop, anything which is brighter than, say, 50% gray, anything brighter than 50% gray, hide that, right? Anything brighter than 50% gray, paint those areas in black inside of the mask. So we can do that using luminosity masks. So let me quickly show you what that exactly means. So if I go to channels, hold the controller command, click here, it will make a selection of anything which is brighter than 50% gray. And if I fill that area with black, that is a luminosity mask. If I turn this off, as you can see, it's transparent. A bit of red is also gone. So anything that was brighter than 50% gray, it created a mask of that area and deleted that area. So therefore, any mask which is based on the brightness levels or the luminosity is called a luminosity mask. Just to wrap up, if I say to Photoshop, if I have an image and if I say to Photoshop, delete or hide anything that is darker than 50% gray, then I'm asking Photoshop to create a mask based on luminosity, based on brightness levels. As simple as that. Now let me illustrate something to make it more clearer to you as to how to create luminosity masks. Let's select the rectangular marquee tool, and this is just for demonstration purposes. I'll just pull up a guide to the center and let's paint half of it with black. So I'll just select this area and paint it with black. I'll press D to reset the swatches, D for dog or donkey, and Alt backspace. I filled that with black. Let us get rid of the guide. Now, if I want to say Photoshop, select everything which is brighter than 50% gray, here's how to do it. Now this is the traditional method. I'm going to teach you my method, which I think is much more efficient. Okay, let's go to the channels. If I hold the Control or Command, if you're using a Mac, and click on RGB, it will make a selection based on the brightness levels. So it will select everything brighter than 50% gray. So as you can see, white is of course brighter than 50% gray and black is darker than 50% gray, it selected that particular area, right? Very simple. And now you can go ahead and create any adjustment layer, any layer with that selection active and create a mask out of it. So right now, if I go ahead and create a curves adjustment layer, as you can see, it comes up with that mask. And if I play with it, it only affects this particular area. If I want to add some red, so as you can see, that will just add this particular effect, this particular area, not this area. Okay, makes sense? Now, let's divide this into further more shades of gray. So if I go ahead, pull up more guides like that, I want to have it in the middle. So let's just bring back the guide and create a selection. And then if you pull up a guide, it will just snap to the middle of it. If you make a selection of this, then if you pull up a guide, it will just snap in the middle. There we go. Now, if I go ahead and fill this with say 33%, or 66%, let's see, let's double click in there, select brightness, and maybe we'll go with say 33%. That's good. Click OK and fill it up with that color. Okay, and this one with 66%. Okay, let's choose 66. Okay, and fill it up with that color. Now if you go to channels, right, and if you hold the control or command and click on this, simply it selects anything which is brighter than 50% gray. 66 is of course brighter than 50%. That's obvious. And so it selects these areas. But what if you want to tell Photoshop select anything which is brighter than 75% brightness? Okay, select anything which is brighter than 75% brightness. Now mind you, 75 is the half of 50 and 100. Between 50 and 100, 75 falls. So if I want to intersect the selection into half, here's what you need to do. Hold the control. Along with that, hold the shift and alt. If you're using a Mac, that would be hold command, shift and option. Just look at the cursor. It changes to a cross, X, which means intersection. If you click in here, see, just this area is selected. It is now selecting anything brighter than 75% brightness. Okay, but what if you want to select the dark areas? It's very simple. Just create a selection of the bright areas, control or command, click on this and just invert that selection. How to invert that selection? Control Shift I, Command Shift I if you're using a Mac, and then go forward like that. If you want the darkest area, select the brightest area and then invert that selection. It's brightness levels. It will select the darkest area, right? Now, how to create luminosity masks out of these selections? Now, here's the traditional way. Here's what we did previously, and many other tutorials show you this way. Hold the controller command, click on that, and then create a new mask. Click on this. This creates a luminosity masks based on brightness level. So bright are the areas which are selected and black are the areas which are not selected, right? So select the RGB back again, and if you want to intersect that, Control Shift Alt, Command Shift Option if you're using a Mac, intersect this. Now create another luminosity mask out of that. There we go, just like that. As you can see, this one, this one. Now if you want to invert that, select this and then create a mask, this one similar to the first one, and then Control Command I, invert it. Now here's a warning. As you can see, it just inverted this particular area. So before you invert it, make sure you deselect that. Okay, so let's go back. Control Alt Z, Command Option Z if you're using a Mac, then Control or Command D. Then invert it, Control or Command I, right? Now, you can do this for the same. You can make a copy of this, Alpha 2, make a copy of this, and you can invert that, Control or Command I. There you go, select that, Command I. There you go. So you have selected the darkest area, little dark area, moderate, and the brightest area. Right? And you can name that. It's becoming a little complex, and you can name all of that. You can get back to RGB, and anytime you want to use any of these masks, all you have to do, hold the controller command and create a selection, and in the layers panel, just create an adjustment layer or a layer, or use that selection as a mask. Now let's have a look at some practical examples of luminosity masks. This image was submitted by Conor McEneaney. He's a really awesome photographer. Go ahead and check more of his work right here. So if you want to darken the sky, right, you want to select the bright areas. So what is the traditional way? Going to the channels and then holding the control or command, clicking here. This selects the bright areas. As you can see, it selected the sky area. Now you can go ahead and create a lot of luminosity masks. I'm not going into that because I'm going to show you my way. So the traditional way is you create a luminosity mask of this, and then you create the luminosity mask of just bright areas, going intersecting those areas, and then create luminosity masks of midtones. It is a complex method. And by the way, you can go ahead and search on Google luminosity mask actions, and you can download actions which can create 10, 20 luminosity masks for you. But here's the thing. So for example, you created a luminosity mask, Control or Command, click on that luminosity mask. If it didn't create the right selection for you, you would select any other luminosity masks. So suppose you created 10 luminosity masks for 10 different brightness levels, and this didn't work for you, so you clicked on the other, you clicked on the other. So you clicked on the 50% one, you clicked on the 75% one, you clicked on the 25% one, whichever works for you, and then come back to the layers panel. And before you come back to the layers panel, select the RGB and then create a curves adjustment layer and just darken it up just like that, right? And that works. That works pretty well. Now, what if you want to select just this area? As you can see, it's affecting this area and a lot more other areas. And you don't want that. What if you want to affect just this bright area or just that bright area? And photography is an art, right? Photo processing is also an art. You cannot say Photoshop, select everything which is brighter than 25% or 50%. You don't want to quantize your brightness into 50, 25 or half of that, 12.5. You don't want to quantize your brightness. You want to have the ability, the smooth ability to select whichever brightness level you want, and that too real time visually. And here's how to create luminosity mask in a much more efficient way. Alright, very simple. Suppose you want to darken up the really bright areas of the sky. So create a curves adjustment layer. This is very simple. Curves adjustment layer, create it, and then go to select, this is important, color range. Okay. Now you might think color range selects colors, right? It also selects brightness levels. It also selects highlights, shadows, and midtones. So inside of select, choose say highlights, right? And there, first of all, decrease the fuzziness all the way to 0. Now you can choose selection preview to grayscale, black matte, whatever you want. If you choose grayscale, it will show you the area exactly which are being selected. So white are the areas which are selected, black are the areas which are not selected. Or you can also choose something like quick mask. The areas that are visible are selected, the areas that are in red are not selected. If you want a little bit of transparency here, what you can do, let's go ahead and cancel that. You can just select the quick mask and just double click on it to open up the quick mask options, and you can decrease the opacity to like 80%. There you go. And here is a very important option. Color indicates masked areas or selected areas. So masked areas is chosen by default. If this is the option, the red will be the areas which are not selected. If you choose selected area as an option, red will be the areas which is selected, right? Right now, let's leave it at masked and click OK. And then do the same, select color range and choose highlights, decrease the fuzziness all the way to 0, and then choose quick mask and control the range. This gives you a real-time view of whatever you want to select. And the traditional method doesn't give you this power. Traditional method also doesn't give you the power of controlling the transition or the smoothness between the areas that are selected and the areas that are not selected. Right now, we can do that using fuzziness slider, right? How much of a smoothness we want. We can use the fuzziness slider. Isn't that interesting? First of all, let's control the range of areas we want to select. So we want to select whole of this area, just like that, and then increase the fuzziness to say 39. This is fine. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. Now, once you're satisfied with this selection, you can just go ahead and click OK. There you go. Let's decrease it a bit, just like that. I'm happy with this. Click OK. And there you go. You can select the mask and fill it with black and invert it. Control or Command I. And you can just double click here and control it, right? Very interesting. Also, we did a mistake here. It's not actually a mistake. We had to do one extra step. Now let me tell you how to save one step. So when you create a curves adjustment layer and make sure the mask is selected, okay, make sure the mask is selected, not the properties. Mask is selected, and then when you go to select color range and do that exact same thing, click OK. You don't have to do anything. It comes automatically. Previously what we did, this was selected and then we did it. So it didn't come automatically and we have to select that, fill it with black and all that stuff. So we learned something. Alright, so let's bring it out, bring the curves property out, and you can just stick it in here and just darken it. Don't darken it so much, it will show up here. So just let's stop it right there. And it creates a really wonderful look. Now let's just go ahead and delete that. Suppose you want to now darken the extra bright areas. So you would create another curves adjustment layer and then make sure the mask is selected. Very simple, select color range, and this time you can choose the range to be really bright areas. Just like that. And click OK. And then you can go ahead, and if you want to darken it, let's just darken it a bit, just like that. Not too much. It shouldn't look funky. You can also increase the contrast, just like this. And let's go ahead and close that. And have a look at the before and after. So let's make a group of both of these. Control or Command G. I selected both of them by holding the Control or Command. Okay. Let me do that again for you. Hold the Control or Command, select the other one, then Control or Command G. Now have a look at the before and after. So this is the before. This is the after. Now suppose you want to brighten this area up, but as you can see, this area is looking a little strange. It's not looking good here. Before, after. So before was looking good. So what we can do, we can create a mask for this group, right? And then take the brush, make sure the foreground color is black, make the brush a little bigger, make it softer. Just paint to the left hand side once, just dab once, hold the shift key, dab on the other side. That will create a line automatically. Have a look. So before, after, we are affecting just this area. Now you can go ahead and expand that and work on it even more. Just double click on the icon and work on that even more. Don't do it too much. If you do it too much, you can see the line here. It starts looking strange. So stay within limits. There we go. That looks fine. Have a look. Before, after. Now you can name this highlights. Okay, now let's target the mountains and the dark areas, but before we do that, let's take a little break and understand why do we need a luminosity mask in the first place. You might be thinking, Lightroom or Adobe Camera already has highlight shadows to darken the highlights, bump up the shadows. Why do we need luminosity masks? Here's why we need it. Suppose you say Photoshop, darken the highlights or darken the bright areas. Now Photoshop is thinking, hey, the mountain is also bright. The sky is also bright. What should I do? Where to draw the line? Which brightness level to choose? It's confused. So what Photoshop will do, it will use whatever it was programmed with. The algorithm it was programmed with, right? It doesn't know. Only you know as a human, as an artist, which brightness level to choose. Photoshop doesn't know that. It will use its algorithm, and maths cannot counter art. Both has to go hand in hand. So by creating a luminosity mask, you get to choose which brightness level to target. You get to choose exactly whether to select the sky or include the mountain along with that. You get to choose the transition, how smooth the transition is. So the choice and the control is all in your hand. And you can specifically not just select the highlights, but you can select highlights within the highlights. So suppose you want to select the very bright highlights or a little bit darker highlights, you can make those selections. Think of it like a lot more sliders instead of just one slider. And that's the flexibility you get with luminosity masks. Yes, it's time consuming, but it's a really great trade-off that you get for the amount of options that you acquire. Okay, now let's target this. So create a curves adjustment layer as we did before. Make sure the mask is selected, don't select this one. And then go to select color range. And this time, instead of highlights, choose shadows. So selected are the areas which are visible and not selected are the areas which are red. So decrease the fuzziness first to 0, and we are targeting these areas. Okay, maybe let's just target the very darkest shadows first and let's make them darker, and then we'll target the midtones. So very dark shadows, just like these shadows, and increase the fuzziness a bit like that. Increase the range, increase the fuzziness just like that. Yep, that's pretty good, not bad. Click OK. There we go. And now let's darken those shadows. Okay, darken it, maybe increase the contrast a bit, just like that. Not bad, not bad. Okay, we'll have to touch this later, so we'll name it shadows. And now let's target this. These are the midtones. So create a curves adjustment layer again, make sure that is selected, select color range, and then this time choose the midtones. Now in midtones you get 2 sliders. Why 2 sliders? Because you want to select, okay, select the areas from 25% to 75%. Target those areas. We are not selecting the overall highlights, so select anything brighter than. We are not selecting shadows, select anything darker than. We are selecting midtones, so anything brighter than this and darker than this, middle, right? So let's try to select just this area. So we need to first make it visible. There we go, just like that. Okay, that looks fine. Now you can go ahead and increase the fuzziness. There we go, that looks fine, that doesn't look bad. Click OK once you're satisfied. You can take your time, I'm doing it really quickly. Okay, there we go. And now you can just brighten that up and maybe increase the contrast, just like that. Don't go too much. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Okay, close it. Now that's not looking good here, so what we will do, instead of affecting this mask, let's create a group so that this mask stays, and then make a mask of that group and then paint this area with black. We are not harming. Okay, there we go, have a look. Before, after, this area is brighten now. So suppose you want to add a little vibrance to this area, you can use the same mask. So select this and then create a vibrance adjustment layer and copy this mask there. Holding the alter option, click and drag and drop it there. Replace layer mask, yes, increase the vibrance. Click on the properties, then increase the vibrance just like that, and it increases the vibrance. There we go, have a look. So before, after. Now all you need to do, just start playing with this. Okay, let's go ahead and close it. Let's not name it, we can name that later. And let's create a new curves adjustment layer and select color range. And now I'm just playing with it. Just playing with it. And select the shadows and the range just like that. And maybe increase the fuzziness. Okay, just like this. And click OK. Maybe you want to brighten it up a little bit just like this. And darken it up a little bit. Yeah, that looks fantastic for this mountain. Okay, and I want to keep this just to this mountain, so I'll create a group and then create a mask of that. And to create a negative mask, you can hold the alter option, click on this mask, so it comes up with a black mask. Take the brush and just paint with white. I pressed X to toggle between the black and the whites, the foreground and the background color, and just paint in this area. There you go. You just want it in this area, before, after. Isn't that wonderful? You want to erase that from this area. There you go. Done. Also want in this area, just paint, dab it in there. So have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Drastic difference. Now what you can do, you can create separate curves adjustment layers and just play with it. Create curves adjustment layer. So let's make it really bright and paint the mask completely black by selecting the mask and pressing Ctrl or Command I. Take the brush and just start dabbing in these areas which you want to add some highlights into, right? It's that simple. It really adds some punch. Just like that. Done. And then erase the extra areas by pressing X and then just start erasing these areas. These extra areas like that. And there we go. To add some more drama, what you can do, you can just double click on the right hand side of the layer. This opens up the layer styles dialog box. Then you can take the slider of the underlying layer from left to right to make sure that the dark areas of the underlying layer are deleted from this layer so that we are affecting just the little bit brighter areas. So this is a little harsh. So we would hold Alt or Option, click on it, and just make it a little wider, break it down so that the transition becomes smooth. And there we go. Done. Isn't that wonderful? Have a look at the before and after. Before, after. Really, really wonderful. Now above it, you can add a contrast, you can add some vibrance, and have a look. We had created the highlights, right? We had created some highlights. You can also add some color to it, some amazing colors to it. So you can choose to add maybe a solid color adjustment layer, and then choose a color just like yellow or something, and copy that mask into that. Replace layer mask, yes, and just affect that area and change the blend mode from normal to overlay. So add that yellow nice effect. Now you can go ahead and change the color to whatever you like. Maybe I'll choose magenta-ish. Yep, that looks fantastic. Now maybe I'll just darken it, brighten it a little bit. There we go, just like that. And you can play with it as much as you like. Now you can just also copy that in this area. So let's just bring it above the highlight so that we are not deleting. Okay, so in the water also we have got that effect. So you can just go crazy with this. This is a really awesome way to play with your photos. And also what you can do, you can just group in layers. Right now we have grouped layers as highlights. You can also group them as midtones and shadows. You can do all of that. That's secondary. But as I look at this image, I just wanted to hold and explain to you this. Have a look here. There's a line and it's distracting. It wasn't there before. Have a look at the before. It wasn't there before, which means the transition is not smooth. So you need to find out which curves adjustment layer is creating that line. So this is not creating that line. Is this creating that line? No. This is, or this is? Yes. This is creating that line. Have a look at this, right? So all you need to do, there are two options, right? There are two options which you can do. Okay. Before, after. You can click on the mask and delete those areas simply and just not affect those areas. You can do that. Or what you can do, you can modify the masks. Just select the mask and open up the properties. Go to Windows and then Properties if you cannot see that already. Now you can feather that out a little bit. So it feathers out. Have a look. It feathers out. It helps. Or you can recreate the mask. So while creating the mask, you can keep an eye out for that. So while we were creating the mask, for example, this one, this mid-tone mask for that curve. So let's create a curves adjustment layer and brighten it up. Select the mask, make sure the mask is selected. So we already brightened that up and then create a mask. That's something which you can do. You can go to Filter, you can go to Select, Color Range, and see, choose Selection Preview to None, and there you can see that real-time effect of that. Now as you can see, it's affecting it. So what you do, increase the fuzziness. There you go. So it happens real time. Isn't that wonderful? And in real time, you can control all of it, right? And click OK once you're satisfied. If you have the experience, you would increase it first and then apply the selection, then apply the luminosity mask. And for finishing touches, you can add some more adjustment layers like color lookup and others. Let's turn off this color. It's looking strange and we could have adjusted that better. Right, let's turn that off and you can go ahead and create a color lookup adjustment layer, and let's choose anything, maybe this one. How does that look? Or maybe Eterna. Let's see. Yeah, that looks fine, right? So have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Really creates a lot of difference. Now this is too bright. If you think something is too bright, let's turn that off, turn that on. It's too bright. Select that and decrease the opacity. As simple as that. And there you go. That's how to use luminosity masks in Photoshop. So there are two ways of creating luminosity masks. By using the channels panel, so you can go ahead and select the channels, holding the controller command, clicking on RGB, that makes a selection of the brighter areas. To intersect that selection, hold Ctrl Shift Alt, click on that again. That will intersect the selection. And to create the luminosity masks for the dark areas, just invert those selection. But what about creating the luminosity mask of just the midtones? It's also very simple. Create a luminosity mask of the brightest area. Okay, so this is the color spectrum. Create a luminosity mask of the brightest area. Create a luminosity mask of dark area and subtract it from that. What we get is the midtone. that you can do. Let's not get into that because we already learned a much more efficient way. So what's the efficient way? Create an adjustment layer of your choice, right? Or create any layer. All you have to do then, go to select and then color range. And you have all of that there, highlights, shadows and midtones. Right now we have selected the mask. So for example, you created a black and white or anything you want. You also can create a new layer if you want. And then you can go to select, color range, and then select whatever you like, highlight, shadows and midtones. If you select midtones, you get 2 sliders. Select anything brighter than this and darker than this. As simple as that. You can select the shadows, you can select the highlights, select anything brighter than that. Shadows, you can select anything darker than this level. And then once you create a selection, you can create a mask out of it. So once you add an adjustment layer, also make sure, just a recap, also make sure, for example, you chose levels, make sure that the mask is selected so that you save an extra step. So then you go to select color range and then you make a selection like that. It already comes inside of that mask automatically. And if you're working on a layer and suppose you just painted with some random color there and you want to create a luminosity mask out of that, then what you might have to do, go to select color range and then select whatever you have to select. And if you don't want this to be a part of it, what you can do, just turn it off. Just turn it off and then select color range and shadows or whatever. Okay. Now that you have a selection and you can create on the mask, there you go, turn it on. This just applies in that area. You can now try to paint in any color or apply any photo. It will limit itself to that mask. So select this and you can try to paint in say green or whatever. It will limit it to that mask. You get the idea. So this is the final image that I came up with after playing with the curves a little more, adding a little vibrance and few more colors, and you can do that too. So that's all for this video. Hope this video made sense to you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.